This is Career Coaching X's and O's, and I am your host, Mark Anthony Peterson, founder and thought leader at Sierra Consulting, a small business strategy and technology consulting firm. A small part of our practice is executive coaching. These episodes are usually the summations of some of those sessions, but today we have an exciting interview with Christine-Brown-Quinn, the author of Unlock Your Career Success. I think you're going to enjoy this interview because Ms. Brown-Quinn unlocks many of the unwritten rules that you need to get to the corner office. So take out your pad and pen and enjoy this episode with Ms. Christine Brown-Quinn, author of Unlock Your Career Success. Knowing the unwritten rules changes everything. Welcome back to the podcast. I have a fascinating show for you today. I am talking with Miss Christine Brown-Quinn. She's a former international finance executive, a career expert, a thought leader on women in business, and the author of the upcoming book, Unlock Your Career Success. Knowing the unwritten rules changes everything. Guys, and this is a fascinating book. It's a book that has me re-looking and relearning a lot of what I thought I knew when working in a corporate environment. I am looking forward to diving into these issues and helping to unpack some of what is in the book. But before we do that, I'd like Ms. Brown-Quinn to at least tell us more about her and what inspired her to write the book. Ms. Brown, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. So in terms of what inspired me to write the book, as you mentioned in the introduction, so I used to be in banking. That's most of my career. Absolutely loved it. I then was asked to give a talk at the launch of a women's network at the bank I was working on, and this was in 2010. And I asked, what's a women's network? And then I realized my head was completely in the sand. I hadn't realized, I got used to being the only woman in the room. So the bank said, we're really trying to have more women progress, et cetera. Thought, that sounds like a good initiative. And then I said, well, why me? They said, well, you're a female managing director and you have a family. We want to know how you did it. Thought how I did it? Did what? And that, Mark, led me on a completely different path. I did this talk and I realized that, a little voice in my head said, Christine, this is what you should be doing. So that was my career change. That led to my first book called Step Aside Superwoman, Career and Families for Any Woman. And that's kind of, quote, how I did it. The secrets lie in that book. So my career transition, over the last 10 years, I've been doing one-on-one coaching. I do career development webinars. I do career strategy workshops. Obviously, the webinars is virtual, but also the career strategy workshops are virtual and in person. And a funny thing happened to me last year. A number of people within a very short space of time said, Christine, you should write another book. I just loved your first book. You sounded like you were talking to me. And I thought, but what would I write about? I was really puzzled. And then beginning sort of February, March time, I woke up one morning and I had the whole book in my head. I thought, I know what I should be talking about, what I should write about. This is what I've been talking about for the last 10 years. It's all of those unwritten rules that are career critical, that once you understand what they are, you're able to navigate the environment. The big myth here, Mark, is a belief in a one-dimensional meritocracy. You do a great job, you'll get promoted. It's not that simple, especially the more senior you become. The more senior you become, you have got to know how to navigate that environment. So that, in terms of what inspired me for the book, it was really that revelation that there are a whole set of unwritten rules. And my experience working with clients is, once they understand those, and then I help them with their strategies, it's like, gosh, if I had only known earlier. So my purpose for this book is really to share those unwritten rules with women at a much younger age. I'd say, anybody post university is really something to give you an idea of what really happens in the workplace.
Now, in the book, you start to stress what's called soft skills and the importance of developing soft skills as you become more senior in the organization. Can you unpack that for us? What are soft skills, and why are they so important?
Sure. So the soft skills are really everything outside the knowledge and technical piece of your job. Now, I'm not suggesting here everybody not be competent and have the knowledge and have technical skills. You absolutely must have that. But that's the foundation for the career, not the be-all, end-all. And the soft skills is really everything outside of that. As an example, it would be including influencing skills. It would be the ability to have difficult conversations. It would be also your ability to secure mentors and sponsors, people who will champion your career when you're not in the room. So everything, so I call them, all the soft skills that are career critical, they equal the unwritten rules.
So for those individuals who are moving up the ladder, they become accustomed to that direct correlation between hard work and reward. But at a certain point, they trip over into this new world where that correlation does not necessarily drive success. Why are women still struggling to claim that success that men seem to have figured out? Why do men seem to understand these unwritten rules and women struggle with them?
It's a really good question, and I like the way that you frame that. Well, what I would say is also, of course, these are generalizations. It's not all men or all women. But in terms of, and I thought about this, well, why is it that men seem to know, as an example, that they need to talk about the great work that they do? Women, we tend to, and I put myself in this category. When I came out of university and went into the workplace, I thought, I do, and this is what my parents taught me: do a great job, work hard. And somehow the information, I don't know whether it's, it's here in the UK where I'm based, whether it's at the pub or where it is, but somehow the guys learn sooner that you've got to talk about the great work that you do. You have to make sure that you build relationships with people who make decisions. Somehow that information about how the workplace operates is communicated. The other thing I'd like to add here is this isn't like ominous and negative. This thing we call a workplace is a human environment, human dynamics. And if you think about it, one of the examples I like to use is around self-promotion. If you're my manager, you can't read my mind, right? I've got to be talking about what I'm interested in, how I can add value, etc. So that's why the rules, these rules apply equally to men and women. But somehow I do agree with your point. Is somehow the guys generally seem to know about what really happens in the workplace.
Yeah, I remember getting advice when I first started my consulting career from a gentleman who was a year ahead of me in B school. We attended the same business school. And he said, Mark, you're doing great work, but what you really need to do to impress the partner is get here at 5 a.m. and you make the first pot of coffee, because he shows up at 5:30. And if you're already here with fresh coffee, you get a chance to not only talk to him one-on-one about what you're thinking and what you've accomplished, but he's going to appreciate that he didn't have to make that coffee. And all of a sudden, I have this relationship with the managing partner of the office just because I'm coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning and making the coffee. And I don't know if that's an unwritten rule or how he figured that out, but it paid dividends for me as I got assigned some really good projects working with the managing partner on some of the projects that were under his scope. And so it's fascinating to me to have this discussion and see that lessons like that, when coupled with your competence, really can unlock some doors.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that increased you making the coffee, it increased your visibility. And also, I'm sure you had time to chit chat, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's before the day started. Now, so I can hear my clients saying, "But Christine, I can't do that. I've got to drop my child off at childcare. I can't be in the office earlier than X." And I say, "Oh, get that." But it's the same principle. So you figure out, okay, well, how could I do it? What else does that managing partner care about? What else is he or she really concerned about? As an example, maybe it's around we really want to increase the flexibility in the way that we work, right? Of course, which is a very hot topic right now. But you could then say, well, let me make a proposal around that. I have some ideas about how the firm could do that. You could then set up 15 minutes in the managing partner's diary to say, here are some ideas. You mentioned about how you want us to be more dynamic. I have a suggestion. 15 minutes. I want to share this proposal. So it's the unwritten rule is you're increasing your visibility to a decision maker. And how you do that, you got to figure out what works for you.
When you started the chapters on your 9 unwritten rules, you made the statement that women need to claim their careers. I had to go back and reread that to try to really get a grasp of how does one claim their career. Could you lead us down that path and explain how someone can claim their career?
I certainly can, and I think it's a good place to start, given the current health crisis that we're in. I have been speaking about the pace of change and the level of disruption for the last 5 years. When I think about my own corporate career and change, we used to have these things called restructurings, and they would be extraordinary items, and they would be one-off. Now, every single client in industry, and this is before the current health crisis, was restructuring. It's like it's a constant change. What are the reasons? It's around globalization. It's around technology, right? Every industry is being disrupted. So in this environment, this has always been the case, this unwritten rule, but now more than ever, you have to own your career. Your company doesn't own it, your manager doesn't own it, your HR department doesn't own it. What I mean by that is you're the one that needs to be driving your career. Those individuals can all help you, but you're the one who should be thinking about, what do I enjoy? Where is my interest? How do I want to develop, right? And thinking about, okay, that's the direction. I'm going to take control. I'm going to take steps to make sure that I am developing that way. The passive approach, and certainly, again, this myth that there's a one-dimensional meritocracy, meaning you do good work, you get rewarded. It's much more complicated than that. It's the same thing with driving your career forward. It's a number of different actions and mindsets that you need to be thinking about. Okay, what can I be doing in terms of moving my career forward, to think that somebody else is going to take care of it. They're going to tap me on that shoulder. That's the myth. They're going to tap me on that shoulder and say, Christine, you've done a great job. Here's your promotion. That happens sometimes, very rarely, because you have a great manager and a manager that recognizes talent. But now, especially in this environment of chaos, your manager's dealing with their own issues and challenges and survival. It's not that they're mean. They don't have the headspace to think about, let me think about Mark. How can I help him develop? So that's why it's crucial. Rule number one is claim your career.
Part of claiming the career you mentioned is stepping outside your comfort zone. Is that build on what you were just saying, that you have to figure out a way to expose yourself to career options that you may be a little afraid of?
It does follow. And the key here is, if you think about it, if I'm just continue to do, quote, the job, and I'm comfortable and I keep doing that, and I'm not thinking about, what is the new experience that I could take on? How could I do things that currently I'm not doing and that are a little scary because they're different? And if you think about it, that's where the growth lies. It lies in taking a risk, doing that thing that's different. And when you own your career, you're absolutely right. You should constantly be thinking about that. How can I stretch myself? And that should be linked also to your interest. But if you stay in one of the complaints I hear from coaching clients is, Christine, I feel I can do my job with my eyes closed. That's a result of staying in your comfort zone. Now, also, it may be that you, at certain times, you want to stay in your comfort zone in your job because something really massive is happening personally. I get that. But if you stay there and you stay there because you think, this is comfortable, then there will become a point where your motivation is going to decrease. You're going to be bored.
Now, can you give us an example? I want the audience to really understand what it means to get outside that comfort zone when it comes to their career. Is there an example that you could pull in to shed a little more light on what that means? Because I think, as you say, people do, particularly as they become more senior and they get more rewards, get comfortable in that band of opportunities, risk, reward that they deal with every day. How do they break out of that band and push themselves into this uncomfortable area where they could get promoted up 2 or 3 more levels because they've made that decision?
Well, part of it is thinking about, what is my motivation? That helps get over that fear. So that's the first thing to think about. What would, and some of the, oftentimes I'll ask clients, if you talk to me about what would your world look like if you stepped up to that next level? What would that do for you? And then the question is, what impact could you have? What influence could you have? And then they start feeling more comfortable with, I see. In order for me to be able to shape my team, my organization, my department, then I need to do things that are different and new. So it's being clear on that motivation. And once you say, if I did that and I could get promoted, and of course there's the potentially more money, et cetera. But at the end of the day, really what you're looking for is fulfillment and impact. An example of stepping up out of your comfort zone could be applying for a role that you think, am I ready for it? If you feel you're ready for the role, it's probably not a stretch role for you. You're not going to learn. You want to get that balance right, and only you will know that. I want to be using some of the skills that I have and leverage those, but there has to be a new piece. There should be a bit of a scary part. It could also be a smaller thing, and this is the thing. If you have the mindset that I'm continually growing and doing new things that are uncomfortable, the little things turn into big things. So a little thing could be, so say you're looking to step up to the next level, becoming more senior. What is your behavior like in meetings? Do you come to meetings with some prepared questions or how you're going to contribute? If you're coming to a meeting and you're not saying anything, you're invisible. And that will not get you promoted. And that can be an uncomfortable place for many people. So what I always say for that one is, okay, come with at least 3 questions, or three points, either questions or topics that you want to contribute to, some bullet points. Because questions can be really powerful. They show you're engaged. They show that you're questioning. So they're good examples of a small kind of comfort zone, and then a small thing like participating in meetings, or a bigger thing like applying for a job.
I like how that chapter on claiming the career kind of rounds out with you making the point that your mindset shift has to move from working at a job to focusing on a career, because it pushed the reader to start thinking about the skill sets, as you mentioned earlier, that they have and that they may need in order to build a career versus a job. If women make that mindset shift, it would appear to me that they would have to continually assess their skills. How would you recommend that they go about doing that?
Well, I would mention a couple things. So it's men. This applies to men and women. Both men and women, in terms of career progression, have to be thinking beyond the day job. So the day job you have to perform, and I know this is a challenge, especially in the current environment and the demands on individuals. But it's really important to also be thinking about, what direction do I want to be heading? So almost like a ship, okay, so I'm here now and things are working, but where do I want to point to? Where is that next step? And I think it's, in terms of skill set, it's yes, it's maybe certain experience and skills, but more importantly, in terms of that career, it's about planting those seeds and developing those seeds through networking, through building relationships, through putting yourself up for new projects that are starting to get you involved in an area that you weren't involved in as much as before.
One of the aspects of being able to do all of this and step outside the comfort zone and is that mindset shift that you stress throughout the chapter requires a lot of confidence. You talk about a few confidence killers, though, that can limit a person's success. Can we talk a little bit about those confidence killers and how you might overcome them?
Absolutely, and this is interesting, because this came about through my coaching, coaching clients, where as I was discussing with them, what actions they were taking in terms of progressing their career, I noticed a couple patterns. So especially three key things, which I felt that because they were doing these things, it wasn't giving them the confidence to step outside their comfort zone, like we were talking about. One is playing it too safe. So where they're like, oh, well, I'm not sure if I do the new role, then what would happen? I know my current role really well, so that's safe. And the irony here is that, especially in today's world, where the pace of change is enormous, playing it safe is probably the most risky thing of all. And why is that? Because the role that we're doing and the thing that we're comfortable with, unless it's being aligned to the future, that value of what you're doing is decreasing. So you have to be realigning and moving up the food chain so that your value, in order to stay still, you have to improve and move up the value chain. So playing it safe and saying, oh, I'll just put my head down. So like in a restructuring, what I hear from clients is, oh, I'm just going to put my head down and play it safe. Well, that's really risky, because then nobody sees you. They don't know the value add. They don't know that you're thinking about how to solve some of the current problems. So playing it safe is definitely a confidence killer. The second one is overthinking or over-preparing. I hear this one a lot. Oh, well, I'm going to, once I do more of this reading or once I do this or that, I'm then going to reach out to the senior person and reach out for a, 30-minute coffee or whatever. And what I say to that is, could you be hiding behind the preparation? I know it's scary, but yes, be prepared, but over preparing is and overthinking. We can talk ourselves out of anything. Why something is not a good idea. So overthinking and over preparing. And then the third one is striving for perfection. So in our roles and as we're taking control of our career and we're taking new actions and we're thinking about our development, if we are trying to execute with 100% perfection, we're going to get stuck. And also, if you think about it, even in your day job, not everything deserves perfection. Certain things will deserve perfection, certain things not. When I say deserve, it will deserve a higher quality of attention. But when we're thinking like everything has to be done absolutely, to 100%, well, it's likely, say you're delivering a piece of work. If that's what you're working towards, then by the time you deliver it, that work could be obsolete. So that the timing is really important. So there are the three patterns that I see that if you get caught up in those, it can really impact your confidence.
I really like those. Playing it safe, over preparing, and striving for perfection. Now that first one I really, really like because playing it safe keeps the individual thinking about the here and now, as you stated. And it leaves on the table the opportunity for them to think like the CEO of the company and look over the next mountain and see exactly what and where the opportunities are. If you can see over the next mountain and know what those opportunities are, you can start preparing your career and your skill sets for those opportunities. So playing it safe is a deadly, deadly sin, it would appear.
It is, and if you think about the current health crisis, there's obviously a very negative side to the situation. I would also argue that in terms of the career opportunities, there has to be opportunities also within your department and your organization. They're struggling with certain issues. You can be the one that makes the proposal, that has ideas in terms of how to work through those. And those opportunities, as you were saying with your story, Mark, with the coffee, hey, if you've got an idea, that the CEO is really interested in, say that morale is a concern. And you might be thinking, okay, well, I know about some virtual activities we could do for team building. That would help morale, right? Take that to the CEO. And so I do think that there in tough environments, it also offers unique opportunities.
Right. And you're right. This environment we're dealing with is rife with opportunities, in my opinion, for leaders to step forward and start to think about the future of work. I don't think this is going to go away completely. This may be part of our new norm. And if it does become part of our new norm, that means the way we work, how we engage clients will have to alter to the new norm. And that gives those people who choose not to play it safe the opportunity to step forward with some of those new fascinating ideas that help keep commerce moving forward. So there is a downside to what we're dealing to, but it may open the door for those individuals who've read your book and choose not to play it safe to step forward and advance their careers.
I agree, completely agree.
Now, this is what kind of threw me for a curve when I got to the part of the book where you talked about career breaks. Now, up to that point in the book, we're talking about not playing it safe, not over preparing, but really putting an effort into figuring out and claiming your career. And then you mentioned career breaks and how that can help in building confidence.
Yeah, what I have found is that oftentimes when my clients talk about career breaks, they talk about them in a negative way. It negatively impacts their confidence. I did come across another client who offered a wonderful perspective, which was she said, actually, my maternity break, I came back to the workplace much more confident. I said, "Oh, well, tell me more about this. I'm sure others can learn from this." And she said, "Well, I was in the workplace. I was a little more timid about suggesting how we might tackle a certain issue." And she said, "Then I have my first child, and middle of the night, my child has a temperature. She said, I just figured out how to deal with it. She said, there were things that happen, and you just, as it's your child, you just do it." And she said, when I came back to the workforce, I adopted a similar mentality. This is the issue. I'm not worried about, oh, do I know enough? Oh, am I, stepping on somebody's toes? Whatever. It's like, here's the issue. I can deal with that. That was one thing. A second thing, and this is certainly a perspective that I shared as well, is when you come back from a career break, you see things that others who have been in the environment don't see. You've had a chance to change your perspective. So you're coming back to the workplace, actually adding value, questioning, so tell me again, why are we doing that? Right? Because we get in the habit of doing things without really saying, oh, well, what's the result or what's the impact? So I think that it's that perspective. And then lastly, I would say it's a maturity issue. So career break, I think, especially if it's around maternity or caring for a parent, maternity or paternity, I should say, or if it's around caring for a relative, it does mature you. And then when you come back into the workplace, it's okay, this is a challenge, but hey, this isn't, in terms of what I've been dealing with in my personal life, this is nothing. This is just work, right? So I do think that there are definitely benefits. The other one is also you're more energized because you've had a chance to take a break and to step back. So that's another benefit that I think career breaks offer.
I loved it. I went back and absorbed that part of the chapter several times because it brought back so many personal memories for me. The first thing that it ignited is an old African proverb that says, "When you're born of the sun, you'll never be burned by fire." And it is exactly as you described. Once you get a certain perspective, being in high risk situations just no longer bother you anymore. And having a child and dealing with real life stress, when you move back into the work environment, those things really don't have the same temperature for you they had before you had that child. And I think I benefited from that because of my entrepreneurial career. I started a grocery store in college and had 4 employees while still trying to take classes. And trying to manage that and still trying to make good grades really gave me a perspective that when I became a strategy consultant years later, the problems weren't different. They just had more zeros behind them. And so I didn't feel the stress or risk that other consultants faced when going in to help clients with problems because I had dealt with a lot of the same problems. I just didn't have as many zeros behind the issue. But to me, even though they were 1 or 2 zeros, they were still as impactful to my life and to the people who were working for me. So it that perspective opened my eyes up to how best to manage those high risk situations, and I loved that. It's almost like I wanted to pull that out and make that a separate book because there are so many people, and my own wife went through this. When we had our first kid, I can remember her stressing out about, do I take the time off from work and be with our child, or go back as quickly as I can. And this to me tells me that there's an answer that every person that goes through a major life experience should read this before they make that decision.
Yeah, and I think that the answer to that in terms of the length of any kind of break and how you do that is very personal. There is not one size fits all, but there definitely is benefits. There are benefits in terms of stepping back from the career for a given amount of time.
Right, right. Now, shifting gears, you mentioned as you move into the additional rules, unwritten rules, that women should treat their careers like a brand, like Cheerios, that a company I used to work for, or Kellogg, cornflakes. They need to treat their careers like a brand. How do they go about doing that? And what sort of mindset shift do they need to undergo in order to treat their careers like a corporate brand?
So again, Mark, I would say it's men, men and women need to do this, and again, men somehow know about this a little sooner. But what I like the analogy to the corporate brand because if you think about a brand, it's recognizable. So let's take cornflakes, right? Kellogg's cornflakes. You know what you're going to get. You recognize immediately what it is. And so it's around visibility. It's around visibility. It's around expectation. What do I expect when I interact with that brand, when I consume that brand? And it's the same thing for a professional. You want others to immediately recognize by your name that you're incredibly reliable, that you deliver quality, that you're able to navigate conflict. So similar to a corporate brand, I get my clients to work through, okay, what does your brand look like, and what do you want it to look like, and or how is your brand perceived, and how do you want it perceived? That's a key one. Uh, so, for instance, maybe your brand is perceived as a person who delivers great quality, great work, but maybe people don't appreciate that you're able to build relationships with the client very quickly. And is it a perception gap or is it a real gap? If it's a real gap, you work on that. If it's a perception gap, well, you want to be developing a strategy where you're communicating examples about how you are developing relationships with clients. But the idea of the corporate brand is it's a quick assessment. It's around and it's around reputation and expectation.
That makes sense. Another of your unwritten rules focuses on networking, and you make the statement networking is the bridge to tomorrow. Can you please elaborate a little more on that statement and why it's important?
This is one of my favorite unwritten rules in the sense that we think that in terms of finding a new role, okay, well I apply, I look for companies and I apply. Okay, there's the virtual world now, but the reality is, given the pace of change, you want to be using networking to get you to that next role or position that you're interested in. Maybe that doesn't even exist yet. So networking is a way, and this I think when I use the word networking, people think, oh gosh, I'm not good at networking. I don't want to be, I don't like not being myself, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is simply connecting with people, and it's a bridge to tomorrow because say you're working in a consulting firm. And you're in maybe the retail sector, and you'd like to move on to the media and telecom sector. Well, networking is the key on how to do that. Who do you know that works in that other department? Or maybe who do you know that knows somebody in that department? Could they connect you? Could you have a 30-minute, coffee or virtual coffee with that person to get an understanding of what it's like in that department and what kind of skill sets are needed? And then through that first contact, then you build additional contacts. After that first conversation, you say something like, oh, that was a great conversation. Is there anybody else that maybe, given what we chatted about, I should be speaking to? So you're building that knowledge and those connections to that next step in your career path through networking. It is absolutely amazing when you focus on this. This is strategic. This isn't about the number of contacts that you have. This is really strategic. Given where you want to go, who are the people that you want to be talking to, and what do you want to be talking about?
It seems that networking is also a path to find the right types of relationships, mentors, coaches, sponsors who can get you into those departments, who can help bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be. If that is the right thinking around networking, what's the difference between those relationships? A coaching relationship, a sponsor, and a mentor?
Well, generally, sometimes there's a technical answer, and then there's how it really works. so, so the technical answer is for coaches. Generally they're outside the organization, and it's it's an independent relationship. Mentors could be internal or external, and these are really people who can offer guidance. Sponsors, they open doors. Now, the reality, especially with mentors and sponsors, is they can blend. You could have a mentor that then becomes a sponsor. So you develop a relationship with a mentor. You're able to check in now and again, sharing some of talking about what you're up to, maybe asking for advice on this and that, and then maybe that mentor is thinking, I think this person would be excellent for this next role. I'm gonna see if I can open a door, and a mentor becomes a sponsor. So in reality, they can blend. The one that is absolutely crucial for career progression is a sponsor. You can't open the doors by yourself. And I have a client who, she was working for one of the tech consulting companies for about 15 years. And she got the promotion. She was at the same level. She got the promotion, one level up to senior manager. And she said, Christine, if only I had known that I needed sponsors. I thought it was just doing a good job.
Right.
And this, this is the thing is, especially the more senior you become, you have to get other people to champion you. And why does a sponsor sponsor you? You make them look good, right? They can see your talent. So they are really crucial.
That's the one area I see the people struggle with the most, is finding that sponsor. First realizing they need it, as you said earlier, but then coming up with strategies to impress, to help, to build that sponsor's career so that they will then in turn turn around and elevate your career. How do you help clients figure out how to navigate that process? Because I've talked to a lot of people, particularly when I was still a consultant with one of the big firms, where junior people were struggling to find the right sponsors to help them get to the next level.
Yeah, and I think that particularly in the kind of quick environment that we operate in, I get a sponsor like it's a transaction. Getting a sponsor is a process. So it's thinking about, okay, well, first of all, you may have one or several sponsors. So you think about, what do I need? What do I need? Where do I need help in terms of opening a door? And so, that could mean, a couple different sponsors. And then the question is, okay, what does that sponsor care about? And how can I align interests? How can I align what I'm trying to do with what the sponsor's trying to do? And as you were saying, Mark, helping them, it's about, well, how can I position it so that they see by helping me, I'm also helping them. So, and also it has to be the mentality of give. As the person looking for that sponsorship, you must give first. And I think that sometimes is a message that can be difficult. Well, hold on a second. I just want to go to the next level. I just want my career to progress. Well, it's not that simple. You have to build that relationship. So an example would be, I get this question a lot. But gosh, the sponsor's so much more senior than I. How could I possibly help them? Well, one example is a sponsor, because of their seniority, they don't see what's going on at the lower levels of the organization. They may not really know that there's an issue with morale, or they may not really know that this strategy that's come from the top, that it's really having hiccups in terms of implementation. And if you go to a sponsor and say, I just want to mention my observations around our new strategy, people seem to be struggling with this piece. That's gold dust for a sponsor, because a sponsor can't see that because she or he are too senior.
That absolutely is spot on. Providing those eyes and ears for especially senior executives that are layers removed from the day-to-day operation becomes an important role that you can play to differentiate yourself within the workplace. And I'm hoping individuals that are listening to this podcast are taking notes, because developing the type of relationship that gets you promoted takes time, takes investment. And it reminds me, as you were explaining it, almost of kind of the old world where you would have an apprentice and a master. And of course, that apprentice is doing a lot of the work that makes money for the master, but at the same time, developing those specialized skills to one day become a master. And it's that symbiotic part of it that makes the relationship work for both parties. And in my opinion, some people struggle with finding a sponsor because they're not willing to develop that symbiotic part of it where both sides win.
Yeah, I think there's truth in that, and also thinking about, okay, well, what am I getting? How is this helping me? Well, guess what? If that's the attitude you have, the sponsors are not really interested, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Now, you move towards the latter part of your unwritten rules, and from the perspective of someone that's moving into the senior roles, you challenge them by saying you need to get comfortable having challenging conversations, especially dealing with those conversations with your salary or getting pay raises. Why is that so important for someone? And let's see if we can unpack that unwritten rule a little bit.
This is one of my favorite. And the pay and promotion I'd like to put in brackets. That's one challenging conversation. But I built a career around this. So so here I am coming to England in the early 90s, hired into the banking sector, MBA from a top school. I'm fluent in four languages. All of this, and you think, that's really a great start for a career. And what I found, actually, all that opened the door, and certainly the MBA opened the door for that role. But the key soft skill, or the key skill that enabled me to progress to managing director, was this one. Not that there weren't others. The world's not that simple, but this was a key one. This was part of my brand in terms of having challenging conversations. And what I found working in an alpha environment is that oftentimes the guys would shy away from the difficult conversations, the thing that really needed to be discussed. So as an example, when my first job on the trading floor, my job was product manager, sales manager for a short-term money market product. And my boss said, "Hey, Christine, you have to develop relationships with all the other salespeople on the trading floor. They have to open up their client book to your product." And one of the most senior and successful salespeople on that trading floor, I felt, did not respect me. And I had a situation in front of a trader where he effectively said, "What are you doing here? You don't know what a bond is." I'm thinking, what? So that was the beginning. And I knew, gosh, I had so much on the line. My husband moved over for my job. We had two young kids. that forced me. Talk about motivation and getting out of your comfort zone. I am not an extrovert. I've learned to become an extrovert because I wanted to have an impact on the world. But my motivation was, oh my gosh, I got a lot on the line here. I've got to step out of my comfort zone. So we had our one-on-one conversation, and I told the guy he made me feel stupid, and that I really wanted to work together well because it would help him and it would help me, right? So win-win. And that changed. Oh my gosh! After that, everybody was like, "Oh, what did Christine have a conversation with Earl with? Like, what's going?" I told no one, but my reputation was, if there's a difficult issue, don't mess with Christine because she's not going to run away. And so I learned at that point, and then, it was constant that because conflict it's just part and parcel to our daily lives and to the work environment. So when there's a conflict, I thought, okay, well, let's work this out. And making sure that you have conversations in private, that you're respecting people, you're showing them very early in the conversation what's the carrot for them, why does it make sense to navigate this. So it's not one conversation, it's many conversations. So that is definitely a really good tip. Now, the pay and promotion is important for a couple of reasons. One is, and sometimes I work with clients and they'll say, "Oh, but Christina, I'm okay with my salary. I think I'm being underpaid, but it's okay. Everybody knows I do a good job." There's a couple issues with that. One, eventually it does catch up with you, and you lose your motivation, and you get mad and angry because you're not being rewarded like you should be rewarded, right? The second is, others internally look at you like, well, why isn't he or she being paid more? They should be paid more. And then it's like, well, don't they care enough about their own value to be asking for more, what they deserve? And then I think the other reason it's really important is especially if you have an external role, but even internally, having the right title and being at the right level enables you to execute on your role. It's an enabler. So it's not an end in itself, but if you think about it, if I have a certain title or position, when I'm going and interacting with different parts of the firm and I'm asking people to do things that don't report to me, that helps me have the gravitas I need in terms of doing my job well. So I think there are a number of reasons why pay and promotion are important. It takes the same approach. So getting over that fear and uncomfortableness of having the conversation is to think about, okay, well, what's my motivation here? Okay, my motivation is I want to stay with the organization. I like the organization. I like my department. I like what we do. I like our clients. In order for me to stay, I need to have the right level of reward.
That is interesting because you're right. A challenging conversation can cause you not to get a whole lot of sleep the night before when you know you have to have it. Most people will run away from it, even if the challenging conversation means better outcomes for them. And that's in their personal life and in their corporate life. This unwritten rule is a must to master if you're going to round out the career that you want to claim for yourself. I loved that particular unwritten rule. I do have a question, though, that relates to the current environment. Now that everyone's at home working remotely, are there more opportunities for people to hide? Or are there more opportunities for people not to be noticed? And does it make it difficult for certain groups now to not be able to show their skill sets? Are you seeing anything different that in this environment that may not have emerged when we were all in the office together?
Yeah, it's a really apropos question, and the thing about the unwritten rules is they also equally apply to the virtual world because we're still humans interacting, virtually. And the thing that's more of a challenge is I do think it takes more of an intentional action and intentional strategy to navigate some of these rules virtually than in person. But the upside is that it kind of forces you, when you're thinking about it, it forces you to do something. So let's take an example. So say, say around our networking. Okay, well, say you wanted to move to that new area that we talked about. You wanted to move into the media and telecom area away from retail. Well, there's nothing to say that you still can't set up a virtual coffee. And I like that term because I think what can happen in a virtual environment is we get very tactical. Okay, I'm having this telephone call because I want to achieve this, this specific tactical outcome. Or the same thing with a video call, it's tactical. And we have to remind ourselves that in the workplace, we have tactical conversations, we have strategic conversations, and we have relaxed conversations. A virtual coffee is a relaxed conversation. So you could still, in the virtual environment, reach out to that person in the media and telecom group and say, really just like to have a 30-minute conversation, 30-minute virtual coffee, so-and-so recommended. And it sets the scene. So I do think it's a challenge, but there are also some pluses. As an example, when if I were to have a conversation, say a tricky conversation, which I have done, either on the phone or virtually, I have a little Post-it note next to my laptop about remembering for certain things. Okay, right. So I got my checklist there. If I were doing that in person, I couldn't have my checklist.
Got your little cheat sheet there, right there
Yeah,
next to you.
Exactly. So there are definitely advantages, but you do have to make the effort. You're not gonna bump into somebody next to the coffee machine, right? So thinking about replacing some of that. Also managing your teams, making sure that you're also celebrating successes, that maybe the first 5 minutes of every team catch up, maybe it's or 10 minutes depending on the size of the team, everybody just talking about what they did on the weekend or whatever, just making sure that you're trying to replicate that more rounded environment of the in-person workplace.
What I take away from that is that you have to be deliberate with everything you do. The unwritten rules give you an opportunity to master that both in the virtual and the physical world. But in that virtual world, you got to ratchet it up a few more notches and really be deliberate in applying the rules to get the impact you want. If that tree falls, even if it falls virtually, you got to tell enough people about it so that they know it fell. And so
Exactly.
it's extremely important, as you say, to celebrate the victories, to celebrate the messages, to celebrate the work, and spread that message with all the platforms that are available to you to manage your teams, to let them know it's been done and let your bosses know it has been done. And that's what I love about what you've accomplished with this book, is that it has become a resource guide for anyone that wants to succeed in corporate America, male or female. And so I really enjoyed going through it and learning from it and talking with you today. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about how they can work with you and your consultancy, the Female Capitalist?
Absolutely. So as we were saying in Mark's kind introduction, my focus is really on helping professionals with their career progression in a very practical way. So I'm not an academic. I'm practical professionals with the experience, with the lows and highs experienced firsthand. I do that through book writing, through one-on-one coaching, career development webinars, and career strategy workshops. And I have always done this virtually as well as in person, as my clients are global. And the best way to reach me really is through my website, which is just my name, christinebrown-quinn.com. If you can connect with me there.
And where can they get a copy of this book, Unlock Your Career Success? Knowing the Unwritten Rules Changes Everything.
You can get a copy on Amazon.com, and I'm delighted to say that last week the book reached number 2 on Amazon's bestseller list for business ethics and business and finance. So it is recommended, and you'll see some great reviews on that site as well.
Well, we need to do one thing. We need to get that book to number 1. So I'm encouraging everyone to go out and get your copy of Unlock Your Career Success. I think you will enjoy it. I think it will become your personal Bible. And when there are scriptures in this Bible that you don't quite get, reach out to Miss Christine Brown-Quinn at her website, schedule an appointment, schedule a webinar, get the feedback you need to get out of your comfort zone and into the career that you're about to claim. Ms. Brown-Quinn, this has been fascinating. I have enjoyed talking with you, and I can't wait to share this with the audience.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, Mark.
I want to thank Ms. Christine Brown-Quinn for coming on the podcast and sharing all of that great information with you out of her book, Unlock Your Career Success. I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, hit subscribe. I know you're going to share this episode with your colleagues because the best people listen to this podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may like some of my other podcasts. Guerrillapreneur, the art of waging small business warfare. If you're a maverick and an entrepreneur, that's the podcast for you. If you're not a maverick, you might not want to go up into that podcast. Or you may like gigging, everything in this sharing economy. If you're interested in the gig and sharing economy and you want news, views, and predictions, that's the right podcast for you. I'll leave links in the show notes to both podcasts. Tell us the issues you're struggling with in your career, and we will research them, and we might even do a podcast episode about them. If you need more support for your career, please find us on the web at ceyero.com, CEYERO.com, and let us help you develop a plan for your career. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Ceyero Consulting. This has been Career Coaching X's and O's, and I'm your host, Mark Anthony Peterson, founder and thought leader at Ceyero Consulting.